The first thing that you want to do is go ahead and open a new blank browser in Chrome so that we can test our web page. You will also obviously have a browser open or a tab open that has these directions so that you can watch. Maybe you need to stagger them above and below, um, or maybe keep another tab for the directions and then one to test. It's up to you how you do that. You do need to have a window open to text edit. Make sure you have the preferences set according to the directions in stage 1. And then, of course, a folder or a finder window that goes into your bookworm folder that's titled your period number underscore your last name underscore bookworm. All lowercase, no spaces. Inside that folder, you have your images folder, and inside the images folder, you have 4 images that you've copied from Poland Pickup. Okay? So we want to go ahead and start by creating the template layout that will take place on every page of the website. So we'll start by putting in all of our basic tags. Remember that it does not matter whether you type these in all caps or all lowercase or a combination. Um, I do recommend that you put your tags along the left-hand margin because it does make it easier for you to see and to edit. Um, and then just be consistent with it. So the HTML tags tell the browser that this is an HTML document. Then we have the head, which opens and closes, and the body, which also opens and closes. Remember that the head is for things that go on kind of like behind the scenes. It helps translate the look of your website, but you don't actually see it in your site. Anything that you want to appear in your website goes between the opening and the closing body tags. Inside the head, we also have the title. And I'll go ahead and put those on the same line so that we can put the title in there. Now, because the title of this particular website is going to be for a bookshop, I'm going to go ahead and put in the Bookworm Bookshop because that's going to be something that's consistent throughout the website. And then each page we can change it a little bit depending on which page it is. Okay. So the first thing that we want to do is set up the layout. And so that's going to go inside our body. And I'm going to go ahead and space it out a little bit to make it easier to find. We are going to start by putting in a div tag. Okay. And a div is simply one of those things that we use to hold things in place. Sometimes we have divs that are nested inside other divs. Other times we use one div by itself, and that's what we're going to do in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and do div. I have to give it an ID so that when we put in some code, it knows how to find it. Whenever you have an equal sign, you always have to put in quotes. And we are naming this placeholder. That's going to be the name of this div. And once we put that in, we always want to go ahead and put in our closing div tag. Whenever you open something up, it's a good habit to go ahead and close it if there is one so that you don't forget later. Now, I do want to point out that the div is the actual tag. ID is the attribute. Okay, it's something that can go in the tag. And whenever you have an attribute, you have a value. Okay, so when you have attribute equals and then your value. So don't forget that there is always something that goes along with it. Now, the div tag by itself isn't going to do much if we don't tell it what it wants to look like. And this is where we have to go back into our head, and I'll give myself a couple of spaces so that I can work on it. We're going to put in what is called a style. And there's different ways that we can add style to a website. We can do inline styles. We can put styles inside the head. We can also attach a style sheet. It all just depends on the website and what you're trying to design. For now, we're going to go ahead and put it inside the head. So we need to put a tag, and this tag is going to be style, and we have type as the attribute, and the value is text/CSS. Okay, and then I close that. And then, of course, I need to close the style tag. Now, what we're specifying inside this style tag is going to be the style that we're giving placeholder. Okay, and that's the name of the div. So I put a # or hashtag and then placeholder. Then I'm going to hit space and I'm going to use my curly bracket. And this is where we're going to go ahead and put in the style. Now, I am hitting tab right here. And you don't have to, it's not a requirement, but I find that it's easier to edit if I do. So I'm going to put in position relative. And the reason I'm doing this is because relative will allow it to float in the middle of the page. Okay, whoops. Notice that this is a colon and this is a semicolon. Okay, and there is a difference between them. So top, this is how many spaces the div starts from the top of the page, and I want it to start 5 pixels. Okay, so again, colon and semicolon. I want to specify the width of my div. And the width of my div, because we're on big screen computers, this size is going to make it seem small. But I want you to think about the fact that not every computer is this big. In fact, if you happen to view the site on a Chromebook in another class, or even if you notice the size of some of the teacher laptops that we work on, the PCs, they don't have big screens. So we want to try to make things fit all the possible screens that we'll use. So for this one, because this is just a small website anyway, with not a lot of information, we're going to make the width 800 pixels. Then I'm going to put in height because I want to specify a height for this div. And I'm going to put in 500 pixels. Now, the z-index is something that's more important when we have multiple divs because it allows us to stack some on top of each other so that they overlap. But this one, we're just going to have one, so the z-index is 1. Then I told you that position relative allows us to float our div in the middle of the page. Well, that only works if we specify that there is a margin on our left side of auto and a margin on our right side of auto. Whoops. Okay. So go through this, make sure that you have all of these first ones as colons. That means 2 periods on top of each other. Okay. The last one in each line should be a semicolon, which is a period on top of a comma. Everything has to be spelled correctly and everything has to be in place, otherwise it does not work. Because we're going to use this layout, these tags on every single page, we want to go ahead and save this right now. So I'm going to do a file save. I am going to find my folder. And remember that you're saving yours, your Bookworm folder is in schools. I do not have a folder in schools, only students do. I'm going to go ahead and call this layout.html. Okay, .htm and .html work the same, but we want to be consistent with what we use. So go ahead and hit save, use HTML, and it's going to show up here as a web page. If I drug this over here into the browser, we're not going to see much right now because all it is a layout. There's nothing there except for the title. Notice where the title appears. This title right here appears in the tab of our web page. You can go ahead and move on to the next video to build your home page.